Step 2. A change of taste. Becoming drawn to boundary lovers. A full 12 months had passed since Tammy and Scott had changed churches. They were reflecting back on the last year. They had attended their former church since their marriage several years ago. It was a doctrinally correct and active fellowship. But one problem that didn't go away was the church members' attitude towards attendance at church functions. They placed a great premium on being present at each and every gathering, from occasional worship and correct praise concerts to midweek service and weekly small group Bible studies. Conflicts arose when Scott and Tammy missed a few meetings. They recalled the night old friends from out of town came to visit them. Tammy had called Janice, her small group leader, to tell her be missing the evening's meetings. I think there's a problem in commitment here, Tammy, Janice had replied. If we really meant something to you, you'd be here. But you just go and do what you have to do. Tammy was furious and hurt. Janice had shamed her for wanting to have a night off with her friends. It was this inability of her group to understand the word no that subsequently fueled the group's move to another church. Now, a year later, she and Scott feel pleased with their decision, though their present fellowship was also active and encouraged lots of involvement. No one became critical or judgmental when members needed time off for some reason or another. How's this for a contrast? Scott said to Tammy. I called Mark, our men's prayer breakfast leader, yesterday. I just flown in on a red eye flight from LA. I told him I was exhausted, and wasn't sure I'd be worth much if I went to the breakfast. What do you think he told me? What are you doing on the phone with me? He said. Get yourself in bed and catch some Z's. That sort of that sort of understanding makes me want to be there next time. At one time, both Scott and Tammy thought their first church attitude was correct. They weren't even aware that others could understand their no. Now, a year later, they couldn't conceive of returning to that situation. People with immature limit setting abilities often find themselves involved with boundary busters. These may be family members, colleagues, spouses, church members, or friends. The confusion seems normal to them, so they aren't very aware of the destruction it causes for themselves and others. As boundary injured individuals begin developing their own boundaries, however, a change occurs. They become attracted to people who can hear their no without being critical, without getting hurt, without personalizing it, without running over their boundaries in a manipulative or controlling fashion. People will simply say, okay, we'll miss you. See you next time. The reason for this shift is hidden in the way we have been constructed by God. We were created free for one basic purpose: to love, to be meaningfully close to God and to others. And over all these virtues, put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. Colossians 3, verse 14. This fundamental truth underscores the deepest part of our hearts. And when we find relationships in which we have freedom to set limits, something wonderful happens. In addition to the freedom to say no, we find the freedom to say a wholehearted, unconflicted, gratitude driven yes to others. We become attracted to boundary lovers because in them we find permission to be honest, authentic, loving individuals. To be a boundary injured person, people who can say a clear no sometimes seem curt and cold. But as the boundaries become firmer, curt and cold people change into caring, refreshingly honest people. We need to join with boundary lovers in deep, meaningful attachments. Boundaries can't develop in a vacuum. As we make connections involving asking for support and understanding with these people, God gives us through them the grace and power to do the hard work of limit setting. This drawing through boundaried individuals extends to God. Some people will begin finding out that the holy, just God about whom they read in the Old Testament isn't bad or scary. He just has very clear boundaries. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. Isaiah 55, verse 9. Step 3. Joining the family. As we find our preferences changing from boundary muddled relationships to more clearly defined people, we begin developing close and meaningful connections with people who have clear boundaries. We begin growing in boundaries in our present relationships or finding new attachments in which to invest or both. This is a crucial phase in boundary development. Why is it so important to join the boundaried family? Mainly because, as with any spiritual discipline, boundaries can't be worked on in a vacuum. We need others with the same biblical values of limit setting and responsibility to encourage us, practice with, and stay with us. That's what Wayne discovered. Couldn't believe the change. Over the past few months, he had become aware of his lack of boundaries at work. While other employees went home on time, he was frequently asked to stay later. He wanted to stand up to his boss and let him know that his work limits were going to become tighter and more realistic. But every time he approached his superior, his anxiety kept his tongue tied and silent. Wayne despaired of ever developing mature work boundaries. About this time, he joined a support group at church. His relationship in the group and he deepened, and he began to trust the members. Finally, he was able to emotionally take them with him to work the day he sat down with his boss and worked out the overtime conflict. It was the safety and support of the group that gave Wayne the strength he needed to tell the truth at work. Jesus defined fellowship as two or three people gathered in his name, saying that he would be there in the midst. Matthew 18, verse 20. It is this very combination of his spirit and the emotional memories of those who believe in us that helps us keep firm boundaries. Why? Because we know we have a spiritual and emotional home somewhere. No matter how caustic the criticism or how severe the rejection of the one we're in conflict with. We aren't alone, and that makes all of the difference in the world in boundary setting.